Greetings, I'm Jameson, and as it turns out, the book, A Concise Introduction to Linguistics, 3rd edition by Bruce Rowe and Diane Levine, it doesn't talk a whole heck of a lot about Chomsky's mentalism. So I would like to talk about Chomsky's mentalism, how the mentalist approach to linguistics butts heads with behaviorists, and I would also like to talk about how the mentalist approach to linguistics butts heads with social psychology and specifically the power of the social situation. So first, let's start with Chomsky's mentalism. Chomsky's mentalism purports that given the outcome of a child learning a language, the primary cause of that outcome is the child is born with an innate ability towards an understanding of the universal constructs and patterns of the system of language. But the child is not born with an innate ability toward a particular type or specific language. So, for example, if a child was born in Mexico and both of his or her parents are Mexican in their national origin, then there's no guarantee that they're going to learn a language such as Spanish if they wind up being raised in England shortly after they're born. So the child can learn any language, but can only learn the languages available to him or her based off of what environment they're in. So the environment for the variety of languages that a child could learn is going to be different in Mexico versus England. So this is kind of what this webpage talks about, why Chomsky and Linguistics is Mentalistic, by Gilbert Harriman. And I will show you the works cited page at the end, as well as the works cited for A Concise Introduction to Linguistics, which you can see that they don't really talk about Chomsky's mentalism very much. So here, Noam Chomsky is also shown on this resource that the interaction and behavior between the child and parent is still absolutely necessary, despite the child's innate ability toward understanding the universal constructs and patterns of the system of language, because the child learns and understands the language or languages by experiencing them in their daily life and in the daily life of the environment. So mentalism doesn't say that that interaction and behavior are completely unnecessary. Mentalism would say that it is necessary, but the innate ability of the child to understand the universal constructs and patterns of the system of language precedes the interaction and behavior that takes place. So like for another example is like when I was visiting Finland, many schools in Finland require students to learn English, Swedish, and Russian. So that's another example of how a child has the innate ability to learn any language regardless of where they're born or to which parents they're born to. So let's talk a little bit about how this mentalist approach conflicts with the behaviorist approach. This website does a pretty good job of doing that. The World of Language, and the person who's speaking here is an educator at the Faculty of English Literature, Islamic University of so it's legit. The important part that this website is getting at is that the behaviorist makes the case that innate abilities are not observable, which is true. Innate abilities are not observable, but a cognitivist who takes the mentalist approach to linguistics would say that a child's innate abilities are evident when considering the true premise that a child born to any parents in any country has the potential to learn any language, which behavior does not do a very good job of accounting for, since behaviors are very different cross-culturally. And as we've talked about, a child can still learn a language even in a cross-cultural environment. So behaviorism doesn't do a very good job of explaining that because of how different behaviors are cross-culturally in cross-cultural environments. So let's talk about how the mentalist approach also butts heads not only with the behaviorists but with social psychology. In social psychology, one of the major findings is that the power of the social situation influences behavior. The Stanford prison experiment of 1971, put on by Zimbardo, shows how healthy prisoners suffered intense emotional distress in a simulated environment based on the power of the social situation they faced with receiving neglect from the prison guards. So this is powerful in linguistics and perhaps a small win for the behaviorists, because when a child sees people using a language, the power of the social situation dictates that the child's observance of people using a language in and of itself is a motivator to understand language, independent of whatever innate abilities there are. But linguistics, such as Chomsky, who take the mentalist approach, would counter that a child's innate ability to understand the universal constructs and patterns of the system of language precedes any influence of the social situation. And Chomsky and others like him who take the mentalist approach to linguistics would also use that same argument with the behaviorists, is that that the child's innate ability to understand the universal constructs and patterns of the system of language precedes any influence of behavior influences between parent and child, not just social situation influences in general. So here is my works cited page. I'll leave this up for a few moments. So in conclusion, not only does Chomsky and others like him butt heads with behaviorists in linguistics, but they also would probably butt heads with social psychologists who talk about the power of the social situation. But at the end of the day, it's probably true that the innate abilities of the child to understand universal constructs and patterns of the system of language probably do precede any influence of the social situation or of behavior that behaviorists might purport.